My name is Elizabeth Carter. At 32, I'm the youngest partner at Schmidt and Wallace Architecture. Tonight, my father, Richard Carter, CEO of Carter Industries, retires after 40 years. I sit alone at table 19 while my brothers James and Thomas flank him on stage. I owe everything to my sons, he announces to 200 guests. My daughter never had what it takes for real business. As applause erupts, something inside me breaks. I rise, clutching a carefully wrapped box, my last gift to him. Before I dive into what happened that night and the aftermath that changed our family forever, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever felt underestimated by someone who should have believed in you most, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, when my father opened that box after I walked out, no one expected what happened next, especially him. Growing up as the only daughter of Richard Carter meant living in a perpetual shadow. My earliest memory of being dismissed was at age 8, sitting at our grand dining table during a Sunday family dinner. Dad was discussing quarterly projections with James and Thomas, then just 11 and 13. When I asked a question about inventory turnover, a term I'd overheard and researched in my father's business journals, he laughed. "Elizabeth, why don't you help your mother with dessert? This is business talk." That was the first time I realized my gender determined my value in my father's eyes, but it certainly wasn't the last. Richard Carter built Carter Industries from nothing but determination and a $5,000 loan from his uncle. Born to working-class parents in Cleveland, he worked his way through state college and founded his manufacturing company at 24. By 35, he had regional dominance. By 50, national recognition. His rags-to-riches story became legendary in business circles, along with his uncompromising standards and traditional values. A man provides. A man builds. A man leaves a legacy, he would repeat like scripture at dinner. My mother, Margaret, was the warmth to his cold practicality. A former literature professor who gave up her career when James was born, she encouraged my interests in design and architecture from an early age. She'd sit with me for hours as I constructed elaborate buildings from blocks, paper, anything I could find. "Your father builds things that function," she would whisper. "You build things that inspire." Her death from breast cancer when I was 16 left a void no one could fill. At her funeral, as relatives offered condolences, I overheard my father speaking to his brother. "At least my boys can carry on the business," he said, his voice low but clear enough to reach my ears. "That's what matters in the end." I pretended not to hear, but those words crystallized what I'd always suspected. In my father's world, I was an afterthought. My academic achievements consistently outshone my brothers. Valedictorian of my high school class while James and Thomas had been average students. Full scholarship to MIT for architecture while they attended state schools on Dad's dime. Perfect GPA while they scraped by with CS and occasional BS. None of it mattered to Richard Carter. "Drawing buildings isn't a real business," he declared when I shared my acceptance to MIT's prestigious architecture program. "It's glorified art." No Carter has ever been an artist. 3 incidents stand out as defining moments in our relationship. The first came when I was 12. My science fair project on sustainable building materials won state recognition. The awards ceremony fell on a Wednesday evening. My mother attended, beaming with pride as I accepted my certificate and medal. My father was absent, attending Thomas's junior varsity basketball game instead, though Thomas spent most of it on the bench. The second was after my mother's death, that overheard conversation that confirmed my place in the family hierarchy. The third occurred at my MIT graduation. I'd been selected to give the student address for the School of Architecture. My father arrived 20 minutes late, missing my speech entirely. He left immediately after the ceremony, checking his watch repeatedly during the brief photographs my mother's sister insisted on taking. "James has a meeting with potential investors," he explained as he rushed away. The meeting was my brother's lunch with a mid-level manager at a company Carter Industries already did business with. My brothers weren't malicious, just complacent in a system that benefited them. Occasionally, I'd catch James watching me with something like guilt in his eyes. Once, After a particularly dismissive comment from our father about my hobby, Thomas awkwardly patted my shoulder. "You know how Dad is," he offered, as if that explained everything. After graduation, I surprised everyone by declining the obligatory job offer at Carter Industries. Instead, I accepted an entry-level position at Schmidt and Wallace, a respected architecture firm specializing in sustainable urban development. "It won't last," my father predicted. "You'll be back asking for a real job within a year." 8 years later, I became the youngest partner in the firm's 60-year history. My design for the Lakefront Commons, a mixed-use development incorporating renewable energy and community spaces, won the Hammond Award for Innovative Design, architecture's equivalent of an Oscar. My salary now exceeded both my brothers', though I never mentioned this fact to anyone in the family. My father's response to each achievement was predictable, dismissal disguised as faint praise. "Lucky break," he said about my partnership. "Very nice," he commented when shown photos of my award-winning design. "It's not like running a real company with hundreds of employees," he remarked when a profile of me appeared in Architectural Digest. Our relationship settled into a polite distance. I saw him at major holidays and occasional family events. We exchanged pleasantries and avoided any substantive conversation. He asked perfunctory questions about my drawings, never remembering the names of my projects or recognizing their significance in my field. I stopped expecting more, until his retirement gala changed everything. The invitation arrived in an embossed envelope, heavy cream cardstock with gold lettering announcing the retirement of Richard J. Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Industries. The Grand Marriott, downtown Chicago, black tie optional. 3 weeks' notice. I stared at it over breakfast in my lakefront condo, coffee growing cold beside me. "Are you going to go?" Marcus asked, watching me from across the table. My boyfriend of 2 years understood the complicated terrain of my family relationships. As a corporate psychologist, he had keen insight into toxic workplace dynamics and recognized the similarities in the Carter family structure. "I should," I replied, though the thought created an immediate knot in my stomach. Later that day, my best friend Sophia was less diplomatic during our weekly lunch. "He'll find a way to make it about your brothers," she warned, stabbing at her salad. Sophia had witnessed too many Carter family interactions over our 15-year friendship. "Be prepared for Richard to be Richard. It's his retirement," I reasoned. "Maybe he'll be reflective. People sometimes gain perspective at milestone moments." Sophia's raised eyebrow conveyed her doubt better than words. The unexpected call from James came that evening. "We're putting together a tribute video," he explained. "Could you send some old family photos? Maybe write something about Dad for the montage." Despite not being included in any of the planning, I spent hours digging through boxes of old photographs, selecting meaningful moments. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, his rare smile when I won a middle school design competition, a candid shot from Christmas when I was 14 where he had his arm around my shoulder. I wrote a generous paragraph about his determination and vision. I described what I genuinely admired, his work ethic, his philanthropy, primarily motivated by tax benefits but still beneficial, his ability to adapt to changing markets. I didn't mention our relationship. Some truths didn't belong in a retirement tribute. Selecting an outfit required similar care. I finally settled on a tailored navy suit, conservative enough for a business function but with architectural details in the lapels and cuffs that reflected my professional identity. Professional, respectful, but not attempting to be something I wasn't. The question of a gift plagued me. What do you give a man who has everything material he could want, but has given you so little emotionally? Traditional retirement gifts seemed hollow. Watches, golf accessories, fishing gear, none captured what I wanted to express. The answer came during a visit to my mother's safety deposit box, which I'd maintained since her death. Among her jewelry and important documents was a sealed envelope with my name written in her elegant script. Inside, I found several items she'd preserved for me. Newspaper clippings of my early design contest wins, a letter expressing her pride in my determination, photographs of models I'd built as a child. For Elizabeth, when she needs reminding of her worth, my mother had written on the envelope. In that moment, my gift took shape. I spent the next week gathering additional items. My MIT diploma, my architecture license, award certificates, financial statements, press clippings about my most significant projects. I created a USB drive with a video montage titled What It Takes, documenting my professional journey. I wrapped the box in expensive silver paper with a simple navy ribbon, Carter Industries colors, and attached a card that read, "From your biggest failure." 2 days before the gala, Thomas called. "Dad's been acting strange about the retirement," he mentioned. "Keeps reviewing his speech, making changes." "Maybe he's emotional about the transition," I suggested. "Maybe," Thomas agreed, though he sounded unconvinced. "Anyway, he'll be glad you're coming." He mentioned it. That small comment kindled an unwelcome hope that perhaps, finally, my father might acknowledge my achievements in his farewell address. That he might, at this significant juncture, see me clearly for the first time. Marcus offered to attend as moral support, but this felt like something I needed to face alone. "This is between me and him," I explained. "Having you there might make it easier, but easier isn't always better." The night before the gala, I sat in my home office reviewing my portfolio, reminding myself of what I had built without the Carter name or resources. I stared at the wrapped box sitting on my coffee table, almost deciding not to bring it. Then I remembered my mother's words from years ago. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is tell the truth. I placed the box carefully in a tote bag, ready for tomorrow. The Grand Marriott's Diamond Ballroom lived up to its name. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across round tables draped in white linen. Elaborate floral arrangements, orchids, roses, and lilies in precise white and blue combinations, anchored each centerpiece. Carter Industries banners hung strategically around the perimeter. 40 years of excellence and Building America's Future displayed alongside the company's distinctive logo. I arrived precisely on time, slipping past the photographer capturing guests against a branded backdrop. The cocktail hour was in full swing, business associates in dark suits mingling with champagne flutes and practiced smiles. "Elizabeth, is that you?" My father's cousin Bernard approached, martini in hand. "So, you're still doing that architecture thing? Fascinating hobby." Similar interactions followed. Dad's golf buddies, board members, longtime executives, all expressing mild surprise at my continued professional existence. "Your father must be proud," they'd say, though their tone suggested otherwise. James spotted me first, waving from across the room where he stood with his wife Vanessa and Thomas with his wife Rebecca. Our greetings were the usual shallow exchanges, compliments on outfits, brief mentions of recent vacations, carefully avoiding any substantive topics. Dad's meeting with some Japanese investors in the corner, James informed me, nodding toward a group of men near the bar. "You should say hello before things get started." The exchange with my father was predictably brief. He excused himself from his conversation as I approached, offering a mechanical half-hug. "Elizabeth, you made it." His eyes scanned my outfit. "Finally dressing professionally, I see." "Congratulations on your retirement, Dad," I replied, ignoring the backhanded compliment. "We'll talk later," he said, already looking past me to someone more important. "Your brothers put together quite an evening." The seating arrangement confirmed my place in the family hierarchy. James and Thomas flanked our father at the head table, their wives beside them. I was assigned to table 19, alongside distant relatives and mid-level employees. The tote bag containing my gift sat beside my chair as servers delivered the first course, a lobster bisque I couldn't taste past the tightness in my throat. The program began after the main course, which I'd barely touched. A video screen lowered from the ceiling, and the lights dimmed for the tribute montage. Music swelled as images appeared. Richard as a young entrepreneur, breaking ground on his first factory, shaking hands with governors and senators, receiving various business awards. The family section featured extensive footage of him coaching James and Thomas in Little League, attending Thomas's college graduation, proudly standing between them at the opening of a new Carter Industries facility. I appeared in exactly one photograph, a family portrait taken when I was about 10, before my mother's illness. There was no mention of my professional accomplishments, no acknowledgement of my existence beyond that childhood image. It was as if I'd stopped existing once I chose a path outside the family business. Various colleagues took the podium next, praising Richard's business acumen, negotiation skills, and family values. The CFO mentioned his dedication to preparing the next generation, looking pointedly at my brothers. James and Thomas delivered a joint speech highlighting their father's mentorship. "Everything we know about business, we learned from watching Dad," James declared. "His legacy lives on through the values he's instilled in us," Thomas added. Finally, Richard Carter took the podium to thunderous applause. At 65, he remained imposing, 6 feet tall with silver hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to commanding attention. He straightened his tie, a gesture I recognized from countless business dinners and family gatherings. It meant he was about to say something he considered important. 40 years, he began, looking out over the crowd. 40 years of building something from nothing. From a warehouse in Cleveland to offices in 12 countries. He proceeded with the expected reflections, challenges overcome, risks that paid off, loyal employees who contributed to the company's success. Then came the transition that would change everything. "People often ask me what I'm most proud of after 4 decades in business," he continued, his voice taking on a more personal tone. "That's easy. I'm proud of the legacy I'm leaving behind in my sons, James and Thomas." He gestured toward them, his expression warming. "They've proven they have what it takes to carry Carter Industries forward. They understand sacrifice, strategy, and the responsibility that comes with leadership." A pause, during which he seemed to scan the room until his gaze fell on me. Unlike my daughter, who chose a different path. The room grew quieter, sensing the shift in tone. "I used to worry about Elizabeth," he continued, as if discussing a disappointing investment. "But I've accepted that she simply never had what it takes to be part of this world. Some people aren't cut out for real business." Scattered, uncomfortable laughter rippled through the audience. Several people glanced in my direction, expressions ranging from pity to embarrassment. At the head table, James studied his plate intensely. Thomas winced slightly, but remained silent. A burning sensation spread across my chest. The crystal chandelier lights suddenly seemed too bright, the room too warm. I gripped the edge of the table, willing myself not to cry, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken by his casual cruelty. Richard continued his speech, detailing specific accomplishments of each son with pride evident in every word. James's successful negotiation of the European expansion. Thomas's innovative supply chain restructuring. Their joint leadership during the pandemic that kept Carter Industries profitable while competitors faltered. 5 minutes about my brother's business acumen. Not one word more about his only daughter. When he finally concluded, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Businessmen and women rose to their feet, applauding the great Richard Carter and the sons who would continue his legacy. I remained seated, one hand clutching the gift box I'd removed from the tote bag, the other clenched so tightly my nails left crescent marks in my palm. In that moment, I made a decision. I stood, smoothed my jacket, picked up the box, and began walking toward the stage. The click of my heels against the polished floor seemed unnaturally loud as conversation gradually quieted around me. I moved deliberately, maintaining eye contact with my father, who still stood at the podium, microphone in hand, accepting congratulations from those nearest the stage. His expression shifted from triumph to confusion as he registered my approach. Behind him, James half rose from his seat, uncertain whether to intercept me. Thomas's hand moved to his brother's arm, subtly restraining him. I ascended the 3 steps to the stage, fully aware of 200 pairs of eyes following my every move. My exterior remained calm. Years of presenting architectural concepts to critical clients had taught me to project confidence regardless of my internal state. But inside, my heart hammered against my ribs, and a voice screamed, "Run. Leave. Escape." I silenced it and continued forward. Richard's smile tightened as I reached him, a reflexive business expression that didn't reach his eyes. Elizabeth, he said quietly, still holding the microphone. This isn't the time. Congratulations on your retirement, Dad, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. I brought you something. I extended the silver-wrapped box toward him. He didn't immediately take it, his expression somewhere between annoyance and alarm. This isn't the time for gifts, Elizabeth, he repeated, louder now, a hint of warning in his tone. I think it's exactly the right time, I replied, still holding the box between us. It's from your biggest failure. Open it when I'm gone. I placed the package in his hands, turned away from the microphone, and walked off the stage before he could respond. The silence in the ballroom was absolute as I descended the steps, head high, shoulders back, channeling every ounce of professional poise I'd cultivated over years of navigating male-dominated spaces. Past the head table, where my brothers sat frozen. Past the corporate executives with their shocked expressions. Past distant relatives and family friends who suddenly found their dessert plates fascinating. Through the grand double doors and into the hotel lobby with its subdued lighting and mercifully sparse occupancy. Only when I reached my car in the parking garage did my composure crack. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled with the keys, finally collapsing into the driver's seat. Sobs wrenched from my chest, years of disappointment, dismissal, and quiet rage pouring out in a torrent I couldn't control. I gripped the steering wheel, pressing my forehead against its cool surface until my breathing steadied enough to drive. I pulled out of the garage but made it only 3 blocks before I had to pull over, overcome again by the magnitude of what had just happened. I had publicly challenged Richard Carter, the untouchable patriarch. I had walked away from the pretense of family harmony we'd maintained for appearances. There would be no going back. My phone began buzzing with notifications. Text messages from James. What did you give him? Then, are you okay? From Thomas. Dad looks like he's seen a ghost. Then, call me. I silenced the phone and drove home in a strange state of emotional suspension, neither triumphant nor remorseful, just hollow, as if I'd spent every ounce of feeling I possessed. Marcus was waiting in my apartment, having returned from his evening work event. One look at my face told him everything he needed to know. That bad? He asked, opening his arms. I collapsed into his embrace, allowing myself the comfort of being held while I recounted the evening. My father's public humiliation, my impulsive response, the gift I'd left behind. It was everything I've saved for years, I explained, voice raw from crying. My diplomas, awards, press about my buildings, financials showing I earn more than James and Thomas combined. Mom's letter about how proud she was of my determination. The USB with the video about my career. I paused. Everything he's refused to see or acknowledge. Marcus stroked my hair gently. And the note called you his biggest failure. His words, not mine, I said. He's called me that to family members when he thought I couldn't hear. I wanted him to see exactly what his failure has accomplished. What do you hope happens now? Marcus asked carefully. I considered the question, realizing I hadn't thought beyond the moment of walking out. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe nothing. Maybe he'll finally see me for who I actually am, not who he wanted me to be. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. But as I spoke those words, I knew they weren't entirely true. It didn't matter, or I wouldn't have created the box in the first place. Richard Carter stood motionless at the podium, holding the silver-wrapped package as the ballroom doors closed behind his daughter. The microphone captured his uneven breathing, amplifying it throughout the silent room. 200 guests remained frozen in collective discomfort, witnessing a family drama none had expected to be part of. James approached the stage, leaning toward his father. Dad, we should continue with the program, he suggested quietly. We can deal with this later. Richard shook his head, a barely perceptible movement. His fingers gripped the box tighter, creasing the expensive wrapping paper. Without a word to his son, he began methodically removing the navy ribbon, then carefully separating the tape from the silver paper. The microphone picked up each sound, the whisper of paper, the slight tremor in his breathing. The plain white box underneath offered no hints about its contents. Richard lifted the lid and stared inside, his expression transforming from irritation to confusion to something more complex. One by one, he removed the items. First came the framed MIT diploma, Elizabeth Carter's name emblazoned across it with the distinction summa cum laude, clearly visible to those nearest the stage. He placed it on the podium, then withdrew her architecture license, studying it momentarily before setting it beside the diploma. The Hammond Award medal came next, its polished surface catching the light as he held it up briefly before realizing what it was. A USB drive labeled, "What It Takes" followed, then a yellowed envelope addressed in handwriting that made him pause, recognition flickering across his features. Margaret's handwriting. His late wife's letter to their daughter. He set it down quickly, as if it burned his fingers, and continued unpacking the box. Newspaper clippings. Financial statements. Photographs of sleek, modern buildings. Elizabeth's award-winning designs constructed around the world. Finally, a single note card emerged from the bottom of the box. Richard read it silently, his complexion paling visibly under the ballroom lights. His hand shook slightly as he placed it atop the other items. The note read, "You built buildings with steel and concrete. I build them with vision and heart. Both require what it takes. I learned to be strong by being your daughter, even when you couldn't see my worth. Goodbye, Dad." Richard stared at the assembled evidence of his daughter's success he had dismissed, diminished, or simply ignored for years. The microphone remained on, capturing his audible swallow as he attempted to regain his composure. He began, then stopped, words failing him for perhaps the first time in his professional life. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I believe we'll conclude the formal portion of the evening. Please enjoy the remainder of the celebration." He gathered the items back into the box with uncharacteristic care and stepped away from the podium. James quickly took his place. "Thank you all for coming tonight to honor my father's legacy," he improvised, professional smile firmly in place despite the tension evident in his voice. "The bar will remain open, and I encourage everyone to enjoy the dessert buffet and live music." As the band began playing and guests cautiously resumed conversations, Richard Carter sat alone at the head table, methodically examining each item from the box. He opened Margaret's letter, reading his late wife's words of pride and encouragement to their daughter. He studied the financial statements showing Elizabeth's impressive income and investment portfolio. He held the Hammond Award, turning it over in his hands as if seeing it for the first time. Thomas approached cautiously, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. "Dad, are you okay?" Richard looked up, his expression unreadable. "What did she give you?" Thomas asked, gesturing toward the items spread across the table. Richard's response was barely audible above the band's music. "Everything I was too blind to see." 1 week after the retirement gala, I immersed myself in work, grateful for the complex Riverside development project that demanded my complete focus. My colleagues at Schmidt and Wallace respected my privacy, though whispers followed me through the office. Architectural circles were small, and news traveled quickly. I'd become not just Elizabeth Carter, award-winning architect, but Elizabeth Carter, who publicly confronted Richard Carter, business titan. My father had left 7 voicemails since that night. I hadn't listened to any of them. "You should at least hear what he has to say," Sophia suggested over lunch at our usual cafe. She'd heard about the incident through mutual acquaintances and had been checking on me daily, even if it's just to get closure. "I'm not ready," I admitted, pushing salad around my plate. "Once I hear his voice, I'll be right back in that cycle, hoping for acknowledgement, being disappointed, making excuses for him." "Fair enough," she conceded. "But eventually, you'll need to decide what kind of relationship you want going forward, if any." The unexpected visitor to my office that afternoon complicated my resolution to maintain distance. James appeared in my doorway at 3 p.m., looking uncharacteristically disheveled in a wrinkled shirt, his usual confidence replaced by hesitation. "Can I come in?" he asked, hovering at the threshold. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk, saving my work before giving him my full attention. "This is a surprise." "Yeah, well." He ran a hand through his hair. "Desperate times." What does that mean? James leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Dad hasn't left the house since the party, Liz. He canceled the golf trip he's been planning for months. He's not taking calls from the board. Thomas and I are running interference, but people are starting to ask questions. That's not my problem, I replied, keeping my voice neutral despite the unexpected twinge of concern. Richard Carter had never missed a day of work in his life, even during my mother's illness. He watched your USB, James continued. The video about your career. He's played it dozens of times. Something shifted in my chest, a complicated emotion I wasn't prepared to examine. How do you know? Because he called us over the day after the gala and made us watch it too. James looked down at his hands. I had no idea, Liz. The international projects, the sustainability innovations, the community impact of your designs. None of it. You never asked, I pointed out. No, I didn't. He met my eyes directly. I was too busy enjoying being the favorite. It was easier not to question the dynamic. His honesty surprised me. James had always been the diplomat of the family, smoothing over conflicts with practiced charm rather than addressing their root causes. Why are you here? I asked. He wants to talk to you, James said. But he's respecting your silence. He knows he doesn't deserve your time. He's right about that. James hesitated. Check your email. He sent something yesterday. After he left, I tried to focus on work, but curiosity eventually won out. I opened my personal email to find a message from my father, timestamped 2:13 a.m. the previous night. The subject line read simply, I'm sorry. The body contained only 2 sentences. I saw everything on the USB. I was wrong. Can we talk when you're ready?
No qualifications. No excuses. No passive-aggressive undertones.
Just an acknowledgement and a request. I closed the email without responding and booked myself on a flight to Singapore the following week. A luxury hotel developer had requested a consultation on a sustainable renovation project, the perfect excuse to put 7,000 miles between myself and the Carter family drama. 3 days into my stay in Singapore, an architectural news alert caught my attention. Carter Industries announces new green architecture division. The accompanying press release stated that Richard Carter had postponed his retirement indefinitely to oversee the new initiative personally. My phone rang almost immediately. Thomas. Did you see it? He asked without preamble when I answered. The press release?
Just now.
He's been researching sustainable building practices nonstop, Thomas said. Brought in consultants from 3 different environmental engineering firms. He's talking about retrofitting all Carter properties with solar and establishing new carbon-neutral manufacturing protocols. That's unexpected. I managed, unsure how to process this information. It's because of your video, Thomas continued. Especially the part about how traditional construction is responsible for 40% of carbon emissions globally. He keeps saying, she was right under my nose the whole time. I ended the call promising nothing but feeling increasingly destabilized by these developments. Was this a genuine epiphany or an elaborate manipulation to regain control of the narrative? With Richard Carter, it was impossible to be certain. Upon returning to Chicago 2 weeks later, I found a large package had been delivered to my apartment. The return address was my father's home. I let it sit unopened for 2 days before curiosity again overcame caution. Inside the package, I found a roll of blueprints secured with a simple black ribbon. Unfolding them across my dining table revealed detailed plans for a community center, not Carter Industries' usual industrial or commercial project, but something altogether different. Notes in my father's distinctive handwriting filled the margins, questions about sustainable materials, natural lighting optimization, community engagement spaces. The proposed location was Franklin, Ohio, my mother's hometown, where she'd grown up in modest circumstances before earning a scholarship to Northwestern University, where she and my father had met. A letter accompanied the blueprints, handwritten on Richard Carter's personal stationery. Elizabeth. These past weeks have been a time of painful but necessary reflection. The box you gave me, your mother would have called it a moment of reckoning, forced me to confront truths I've been avoiding for decades. I failed you as a father. I imposed limitations based on outdated beliefs rather than seeing your extraordinary gifts. I mistook your different path for rejection of my values, when in fact you embodied the best of them in ways I was too blind to recognize. You built something remarkable without my support, showing more of what it takes than I ever acknowledged.
Your mother saw it.
In her letter, she wrote that your determination would carry you further than my connections ever could. She was right, as she often was about important matters. The enclosed blueprints represent my first attempt at making amends. A community center in your mother's hometown, designed to provide educational resources, arts programming, and social services to an underserved community. I would be honored if you would consider offering your professional opinion on the design, and perhaps even consider being involved in its development. I understand if you need more time and space. And if you're ready to talk, I am here. With respect and regret. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, searching for the usual undertones of manipulation or condescension, but found none. The blueprints showed genuine thought and research, though with the technical flaws of someone newly acquainted with architectural principles. After 2 days of consideration, I texted my father. Coffee at Lakefront Cafe, Wednesday, 10 a.m. His reply came instantly. I'll be there. The Lakefront Cafe was neutral territory, a place I frequented professionally, but with no family associations. I arrived early, selecting a table with a view of Lake Michigan and ordering a cappuccino to steady my nerves. Richard Carter arrived precisely at 10, looking noticeably different than he had at his retirement gala. The impeccable suit remained, but he seemed somehow diminished, the habitual confidence replaced by caution. He had aged visibly in the weeks since I'd last seen him. New lines around his mouth, a slight stoop to his shoulders I'd never noticed before. Elizabeth, he said, standing awkwardly beside the table. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I gestured to the chair opposite mine. Would you like coffee? Black, please, he replied, arranging himself carefully in the seat, as if uncertain of his welcome. After the server took his order, silence stretched between us. For the first time in memory, Richard Carter seemed at a loss for words. The community center project, I finally said. It's an interesting concept. Relief flickered across his features at this neutral opening. It needs work, he admitted. I've been researching, but there's no substitute for expertise. Why Franklin? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Your mother always wanted to give back to her hometown, he replied, confirming my assumption. She talked about establishing a scholarship foundation, but after she got sick. He trailed off, glancing out at the lake. I never followed through on that promise to her. Another silence, this one heavier with shared grief and regret. I watched your presentation, he said finally. The USB. I've seen it 17 times now. A self-deprecating smile briefly crossed his face. I counted. And I realized I've been wrong. Not just about you, but about what constitutes success, what matters. He met my eyes directly. Your Lakefront Commons project, the way it transformed that neighborhood, created affordable housing without sacrificing beauty, incorporated green spaces that brought the community together. That's legacy, Elizabeth. That's building something that matters. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Still, years of disappointment made me cautious. What changed? I asked. Besides seeing my achievements laid out where you couldn't ignore them? He considered the question carefully. Your note, he finally said. About building with vision and heart. It reminded me of something your mother once said, after I dismissed one of your childhood designs. He swallowed visibly. She said I was so focused on building an empire that I couldn't see you were building a better world. My throat tightened at this unexpected echo of my mother. The night before she died, he continued, voice roughening with emotion, Margaret made me promise to support your dreams, whatever they might be. I failed that promise spectacularly. He paused. Did you know she confronted me about how I treated you differently from your brothers? I shook my head. Multiple times. The last was about a month before her diagnosis. She said I was creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that by expecting less of you because you were a girl, I was teaching you to expect less of yourself. He stared into his coffee. She was wrong about that part. You never limited yourself, despite my best efforts to make you believe you should. The raw honesty of his words penetrated defenses I'd built over decades. I spent years wanting your approval, I admitted, hoping each achievement would finally be enough to make you see me. I know that now, he replied quietly. James and Thomas have been quite forthcoming about my failures since the gala. Family therapy has been enlightening. Family therapy? I couldn't hide my surprise. Twice weekly, he confirmed with a hint of his old dry humor. Richard Carter on a therapist's couch. Who would have thought? Not me, I acknowledged, a reluctant smile tugging at my lips. About the community center, he said, returning to safer ground. I'd like you to consider being the lead architect. No strings attached. Your vision, your terms. I studied him carefully. And if I say no, then I find another architect and respect your decision, he replied without hesitation. This isn't about manipulating you back into the family fold, Elizabeth. It's about recognizing your expertise and offering an opportunity one should have offered years ago. I considered his offer, weighing professional interest against emotional self-protection. I'll review the proposal, I finally said. Professionally. That's all I can commit to right now. That's more than I deserve, he acknowledged. We finished our coffee discussing technical aspects of the project, budget constraints, timeline, community input processes. For the first time in our relationship, he listened more than he spoke, asking questions rather than pronouncing judgments. As we prepared to leave, he hesitated. Your brothers would like to see you. When you're ready. One step at a time, I replied, not committing but not refusing. Over the following weeks, that single coffee meeting evolved into regular project discussions. I redesigned significant portions of the community center, incorporating sustainable materials, community-centered spaces, and flexible usage areas. Richard asked questions, offered suggestions without imposing them, and deferred to my expertise in ways that would have been unimaginable months earlier. After 6 weeks of professional interaction, I tentatively accepted an invitation to dinner at Thomas's home. James and his wife attended, along with my father. The conversation was initially strained, years of established patterns, not easily broken. But when Thomas's wife Rebecca asked about my current projects, Richard spoke before I could answer. Elizabeth's redesign of the community center is revolutionary, he said, surprising everyone at the table. The solar array integration alone will reduce operating costs by 30% compared to traditional construction. James nearly choked on his wine. I bit back a smile at his shock. Dad's been taking night classes in environmental design principles, Thomas explained, recovering first. Won't let anyone else handle the community center project. It's important to get it right, Richard said simply. As dinner progressed, I noticed subtle but significant shifts in our family dynamic. My brothers deferred to me on topics within my expertise rather than speaking over me. Richard asked detailed questions about my recent Tokyo project, showing genuine interest in the cultural considerations that had influenced my design. Most surprisingly, when conversation turned to Carter Industries' new initiatives, Richard actively sought my input. Your perspective as an outsider with relevant expertise is valuable, he said, using words I'd never expected to hear from him. We've been too insular in our thinking. 6 months later, we gathered at the groundbreaking ceremony for what was now officially named the Margaret Carter Community Center. Local officials, community representatives, and the press assembled around the ceremonial shovel station. Richard approached me as we waited for the program to begin. Would you speak today? He asked. It should be you, not me. I agreed, surprising myself almost as much as him. When the time came, I stepped to the microphone and surveyed the gathered crowd. This center represents more than just a building, I began. It's about foundations, both the physical foundation we'll begin today and the human foundations that shape communities and families. I spoke about my mother's connection to Franklin, her belief in education and community support, her vision of creating opportunities for others. I spoke about sustainable architecture as an investment in future generations. Every building tells a story, I concluded. The story this one will tell is about transformation, second chances, and the power of seeing potential where others might not. As applause rippled through the audience, I caught my father's eye. The pride in his expression was unmistakable, not the conditional approval I'd sought for so long, but genuine respect between equals. At the reception afterward, I overheard him speaking to the mayor of Franklin. "My daughter taught me what really matters," he said, not knowing I was within earshot. "And she definitely has what it takes." Later that evening, as the event concluded, he approached me with a small package. "One more thing," he said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I found this while going through some storage boxes." I unwrapped the package to find a crude architectural model I'd built at age 7, a cardboard and popsicle stick creation representing my dream house, complete with solar panels, aluminum foil, and a rooftop garden, green construction paper. "Your mother kept it," he explained. "She always said you had a vision that was ahead of your time." The simple model represented everything: my childhood dreams, my mother's faith, the talent my father had finally recognized. In that moment, I understood that reconciliation wasn't about forgetting the past, but building something new atop its foundation, just as I'd done with so many architectural projects. "Thank you," I said, carefully holding the fragile model. "No," he replied quietly. "Thank you for not giving up on architecture, on yourself, or even on me, despite every reason I gave you to do so." As we stood together looking at the ceremonial groundbreaking site, I realized that the box I'd given him at his retirement had accomplished something I never anticipated. It hadn't just forced him to see me, it had begun to transform him. And in that transformation, it had created space for something neither of us had thought possible, a relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you? How did you show them what you're really capable of? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more content about family relationships and personal growth. Remember to share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' limited perceptions. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give others is showing them who we truly are, even when it's difficult.